Well, good morning, and I am so sorry I have not been here for the last several days. I don't know what's happening, but the universe is not exactly in my favor right now, although I will say it could be so much worse. As I mentioned, one of my children was in the hospital in December, and now another one of my four children was in the hospital. The first one was due to chronic illness, and the second one was last week as he fell off a roof trying to repair his girlfriend's house leak and punctured a lung, broke a rib, fractured his shoulder, sprained his shoulder, and had a head injury. So it's been a lot. And so if I'm not posting, there's usually a reason why, but I will always be back. And that really prompted the topic of today's video. And you probably haven't heard this word. I just made it up essentially, but it's this experience where many of us have been super traumatized. And I'm going to write about this also in my Substack for this week, which I will be posting by the end of night tonight on Tuesday. Please follow me there. It will be things that you cannot find anywhere else, from videos and articles and research and recipes on, helping you heal your health when you've had a lifetime of trauma and you live in a state of hypervigilance and pop culture. I'll also be talking about Anora, the film, as it relates to being super traumatized. And last thing, while I was in the hospital, I set my phone on the bathroom toilet paper thing, walked out, and in 5 minutes my phone was gone. And so I lost a bunch of contacts. I'm just now getting things back and loaded. I had two numbers on my phone. So, it's just been a kind of crazy lot. And I thought to myself, the phone thing isn't traumatic. It's just an inconvenience, obviously. But as someone who has had a lot of trauma, both as a kid and really as an adult, and for many of us, it's not just like 70% of us have one, major trauma in our lives. Some of us have so many traumas we've lost count, from losing people tragically to losing our homes to medical traumas to mental illness in our family and our kids and our parents and ourselves, that also tend to bring along traumas with them. High conflict divorces, right? Just all kinds of things that I've found. A lot of the things that have happened to me, they're not typical traumas. And that creates what I think, when it's been a lot of things, and a lot of them are sort of out of the box, things you would think I should write a book about this, right? I couldn't make this up. That is also what I'm talking about. It creates some things in us, and these what I believe are 10 of the things that we can really struggle with when our lives have been defined by, not maybe the worst case scenario, we're still here, and but at the same time, when you've been through a lot. And so this video is also just about validation, to let you know, if you're one of those people, you're one of my people, you're not alone. So first of all, when I talk about this definition of super traumatized, we're talking about essentially multiple traumas over the course of your life in some way. Some may have had direct relationship to you. Some may have been adjacent, but like I said, everything from medical, financial, relational, health, everything you can think of could be part of what's happened to you in terms of your life. Now, I wanted to understand, so what happens to us when this happens? There's not a crazy amount of research. Of course, it makes sense that things like, yes, you're more likely to have PTSD and complex PTSD, which makes sense. But also I found a couple things I wanted to share with you. And one of them says this. It says, people who've had a history of multiple traumas tend to be more likely to assume they're not safe in the world, and that other people cannot be trusted, that the world is dangerous, and so forth. And I think many of us already feel that way and are feeling like that more right now. So our chronic vigilance, our high vigilance, is even higher when we've had multiple traumas. And then, of course, where you live in the world, what country, what your family looks like, all kinds of things, your financial situation, your economic dynamics can really make those things more likely to occur for you. And so it also talked about that it made sense that, not only do we have these trauma symptoms, but that we might be more likely to have these cognitive symptoms that are really driven by avoidance and by safety-seeking behaviors. really feeling like there's a constant and persistent sense of threat, and that results in hyperarousal, hypervigilance, and like an aversive emotional state where it's almost like we're ready to go. And I'll talk about a number 10, but I think is also the one massive strength when you've had a lot of traumas. I would trade it, but I do think it's important to talk about. One more research study I also found talked about, of course, those that have adverse childhood events might be more likely to also experience traumas. So, not just from childhood, but as a result of the mental and physical dynamics that have happened to them that were in childhood, like their health issues, their toxic relationship patterns, things like that. And so, these traumatic events are more likely to impact us. So, what does it do to us? And we'll talk a bit at the end about some things you really must do if this applies to you. Number one, you're often chronically anxious. So at the core, you are hypervigilant, you have constant states of hyperarousal or even hypoarousal as a response to shut down. That might be a more depressive response. But generally speaking, we're focusing on anxiety here, where you have a lot of rumination and racing thoughts and intrusive thoughts. You might have more chronic heart palpitations. You might be a person, I see a lot of clients who do this a lot. They go, they're just always trying to take deep breaths and catch their breath, especially in non-stressful moments, but really all of the time. So there's this feeling of urgency, and it can also look like a workaholism, kind of flight response. You can't stop moving, you can't stop working. It can make OCD, things like that worse. And when you're not doing those things, even when you can't make yourself, your body is like frozen. Your brain is always in that kind of hyper state. Number two, you're often very reactive inside, but you may not show it. So yes, you may have mood swings and people see that. But I think a lot of us have learned to put the face on in the midst of trauma and or lots of feelings. And so we are feeling a lot of things a lot of the time. Now, we can also, like I'm saying, be disconnected from our feelings. But if you're with someone who has been through a lot of trauma, even on their good days, there's a good chance that there's a lot going on under the surface for them. And for many of us, we don't even know why or how. I started saying that I haven't been feeling like myself since November, and then with my daughter's hospital visit, because it was so traumatic and mirrored a similar episode when she was 12, I haven't been quite right. And then I had these other things happen. Also, my mother, who I'm in no contact with, has developed a blood cancer and some other things. And so in this exact same last few months. So I'm not going to discuss that today, though I will discuss it in another video. The point is, even when, you think you're okay, there's like a computer often running a virus scanner for danger, for rumination, for fear, for just anxiety all the time. So you're often reactive one way or the other, outwardly or inwardly or both. Number three, a lot of chronic exhaustion, chronic fatigue. You might have illness, dizziness, lightheadedness. Your obviously developed chronic health symptoms that may have begun in childhood might be worse. And so there's just this feeling of like complete and total drain in your body that it's your norm a lot of the time. Number four, you often feel alone. This is a big one. You feel misunderstood, that no one really gets you, especially if you've had out-of-the-box traumas. I've talked about it here and there, but this idea that, if you have a divorce story that isn't your typical story, you don't want to share, or a medical issue that's not something you want to be public about, it can isolate you more. But it can also make your nervous system so jacked up that you really only feel safe when you're alone. And of course, things like autism and trauma and ADHD can exacerbate all of these things. But the bottom line is that I think this is one of the worst parts of this, is you're often chronically anxious, but also like people have brought a lot of chaos and stress in your life. And the isolation can be a good thing for your nervous system, and it can become a not good thing. It can be a way of further removing yourself, further shutting people out. The next one is you can feel detached, as if nothing really matters. You might dissociate a lot. You might be in a space where you space out. You're unmotivated. You just can't tap into what you need to do. That's what was happening to me in the last several days. I was like, oh my God, you have to post your Substack. You have to make videos. And I was like, no, actually you don't. Everyone will be okay, and yes, you like to keep yourself to a standard, but as I just said in my last week's video, so much has happened. I quit trying to make a schedule, but I needed to really just give myself permission to to be where I'm at. But there can also be, some research shows, we are more likely to be negatively wired. So because so many bad things have happened, we sort of view the world through a negative lens. And as human beings, we do that anyway, right? We are so much more wired to focus on the negative, what's not working, than what is good. So this can be a really intentional practice. You have to really challenge yourself, because you can be in a like, of course that happened. And it's like, yeah, I will tell you this. Some of us have worse luck than others. Everyone has loss and trauma and grief and pain. And I'm not being victim-y here, but some of us have had, and I'm still very blessed, don't get me wrong, I'm still very privileged in many ways. But that doesn't mean that, these events haven't been catastrophically traumatic for me, for my family, for my kids, all those things, okay? The next one is we can have a lot of sleep issues, food issues. So feeding ourselves, sleeping well, chronic insomnia, and I truly believe that not sleeping will just hijack your mental health like nothing else. But like, for example, you have anxiety, you're in menopause, right? It sounds good to say just sleep, but even if you use things to help you sleep, those can have risks. They can have like a hangover effect, and so that can make you groggy. But this idea that you have a hard time cueing into your body's needs. Many of us have learned to tune out, or we were not really good at that in the first place in something like autism or trauma or both. And so we don't necessarily have good cues for feeding and nurturing and caring for ourselves. And we have to work at that. The next one is connected is bad self-care, or we're negligent, or we can't keep our house clean, or we're impulsive and we do things that can be not great for us. So there's just this overarching way of not really being able to, in some ways it's kind of good. I think it can prompt me to do things like I just got a kitten. I'm going to be bringing him on. Randomly, wasn't planning on it, it happened, and I don't regret those things. It's the things I've actually planned for sometimes that have gone worse. But at the core, it can be too much if we don't feel well to take care of our homes or grocery shop or clean, and we can feel judged by that, and that can make us want to isolate further, for example, or not ask for help. And then if we don't trust people, going back to the beginning, we're not likely to even ask for help or let anyone know we're struggling. Number 8 can be letting go of passions and dreams and hopes. And if you found that you just gave up on some things, it's important to get help and support with that. The next one can be forgetful, memory issues, executive functioning challenges with tasks, never being able to stay on top of things, scheduling, and like I'm saying, autism, ADHD, we can already struggle with that. It's like really difficult. And so when you get in that space where your whole life is defined by that, you might have periods of like overdoing and then completely shutting down, neglecting your bills for months at a time. That has impacts. And you're not really even trying to like not pay something. It's just that you're overwhelmed by the act of doing something you don't want to do, or that reminds you of your stress. So there can be a lot of those things around concentration, memory, executive functioning. And the last one is this, that you're often really good. I will say this, really traumatized people are awesome in a crisis. I swear I get my most calm when I'm standing in a hospital room and I'm freaking out inside, but I'm standing there going, okay, who's the doctor? What's the next thing? Like whatever it is. And so we really can have resilience. We can be really safe people to talk to when things have gone badly. I think many of us are, and generally, with adverse childhood events, therapists and helpers, nurses, doctors, PTs, whatever it is, social workers. We can also be really intuitive if we make and take advantage of these experiences and start to trust. Maybe we don't trust others so much, but trust ourselves, which is So at the core, you can find yourself, sorry, my daughter's struggling. She just tried to go back to school. And so the last call I just got was from her. And so you can just make all of it like we can be really great at some things. We really can, really safe, and really sit with those in their pain and suffering, and not be about us, to truly have empathy and compassion. And so, don't forget to focus on that too, but also know that you're worthy of help and love and support. So what can you do? I'm just going to give you some things that truly can be helpful. I'm going to go through them quickly so this video is not too long, but obviously you really got to work on your self-compassion. Like I was shaming myself. God, get up. What is wrong with you? I just couldn't move. I had the kitten like right here. And it was like, no, honey, like you've been through a lot. Just let it be. Just let it be. Anybody else, if someone else you loved went through this, you'd be so compassionate towards them. Find it towards yourself. Go on selfcompassion.org, for example. Do the practices. Slow down. Do everything that you have to, like the absolute bare minimum, essentially. Stop trying to be the version of yourself that you were, especially if you just recently had a trauma, right? Obviously, if you're struggling and this is like the trauma's been a while ago, getting therapy, getting help, getting medical treatment, support in any ways you can, books, podcasts. I know it's not that simple for many people, but do something that can actually give you a sense of control, and that can be helpful when you feel so out of control. What can I control, and what do I need to let go of? Acknowledge your pain. Find gratitude. Honestly, I have to remind myself. We have this saying, like, the worst things happen to us, but we always end up being mostly okay. And my daughter said it back to me the other day when this was all happening, and I was leaving California to go get my son, who I brought back to live with me in a hospital bed for the next month. So all of those, reduce expectations, readjust, baby and mother yourself. So many of us don't have an internalized parent to go to, and we're more likely to guilt and shame ourselves, but don't know how to nurture ourselves. So really work on your inner mother, inner parenting if you can. Key strategies. Honestly, mindfulness, breathing, relaxation, progressive muscle relaxation. I've talked so much about guided meditation. I love guided meditation. I cannot do the think about nothing. I know it's more than that, but I cannot. So find some practice, yoga, walking, which is number 2, physical activity. You have to trust me. Wherever you can move your body, if it's around your apartment, if it's taking a walk outside in a blue or green environment, the research shows that can be helpful. I definitely feel more reset when I can get outside, but that can be hard. Emotional processing, do the work, journaling, therapy, talking to someone, right? Feeling validated through watching videos, whatever it is, talking to yourself and just being there for yourself. So working through what's happening, dealing with your emotions if you're suppressing them. Looking at your healthy lifestyle habits. This goes back to what I was saying about our basic self-care. How are you sleeping? What are you really doing with your diet and what you're eating? I mean, when we don't feel good, we want comfort food, and there's nothing wrong with that. But eventually, that often leads to side effects that don't feel good. So maybe you mix it up. Maybe just all you do is drink a big gallon of water today. A gallon, you know what I mean? Like a big thing of water. Little baby steps. Do little things that can move you towards your goals. But look at, how am I taking care of myself? Boundary setting. Right now with social media, by the way, I know I was going to say, when I lost my phone, or my phone got stolen, I can't get into TikTok anymore on my phone, because you can't download the app. And I am a creator there. And so I can get in on my laptop, but I think I have to make videos on my big camera that I use for this. So right now it's just like a whole thing. But the point is, it's kind of good because it was stressing me out. And so really look at your social media use. Look at strategies to put timers on it. Be an inner parent. Would you hand your toddler an iPad all day? I mean, I know we are struggling in this current culture. Many parents do. I'm not judging that. I just don't think it's great for that much time. But the point is, you're that little toddler. It's not good for you either. So do what you can. Do what you can, right? We all have a different tolerance for social media or information or news. Like right now, I need to know what's going on in the world, but it's not good for me to know. I just can't be someone who checks out. I just can't. And I'm a content creator. So even if I wasn't, it just doesn't work for me. But even if I didn't, I have to know. But that can set me up to just feel defeated and overwhelmed and scared or hopeless and things like that, or just anxious. Look at addressing the root causes. If you can work towards getting someone to work with therapeutically, reading a book on trauma or how to deal with your anxiety or your autism or your ADHD, right? What is fueling a lot of the chronic states you live in? And then look at the role that isolating is causing in your life. That really is number 7. Decide when it works for you and when you're like, yeah, I do it, but I'm doing it too much and I don't have any social connections and I want them. The difference is what you long for, but you can be so disconnected from your desire to be with people that you don't even recognize it. And so there can be a thing where, it is important to have connection, even if it's just phone calls. Maybe you don't leave, but you do phone calls, right? I'm a big believer in not shaming us for doing things that help us feel better, but there can be a dark side to that, and it can be too much. So if you struggle, look at your coping mechanisms. Look at the fact that for many of us, what we're really doing is living in survival mode year after year after year, day in and day out. And I have had to work on this one in therapy because for me, I have to be really intentional about sending states of relaxation to my nervous system because it does not come naturally. So that's it for today's video. I promise you I should hopefully have my Substack posted tonight. I'll be adding some videos there and some articles and talking more about being super traumatized. And I hope you will join me there. I really do, as I try to figure out where to cultivate platforms and time. I think we're in a very shifting ground right now. YouTube will be a staple. And my plan, now that YouTube is letting 3-minute videos be posted in shorts, to post 3-minute videos here too. And Instagram is also doing that. I know many of us have feelings about these platforms. I don't know what to do when you're a content creator. It's frankly a dilemma. But I will be sharing those things, and I'll probably be back on TikTok sooner rather than later. Anyway, and I'm also doing an Anora review, hopefully either on YouTube or on TikTok. So if you saw the movie, you probably just saw the Academy Award stuff was just released. And I think it's really interesting to think about Anora as someone who most likely had a lot of super trauma in her childhood, most likely. And the research tends to support that, though not for everyone who works in Anora's field. So anyway, thank you so much for being here. I'll be sharing my little kitten bear with you soon. Hold on one second, I gotta show you. Anyway, that's it. Have a good day. Take care.